And it looks like we're live. All right. So, welcome everybody out there on Substack. This is a big experiment, at least for me. I think the whole world has started to do Substack lives. And for me, it gives me a really great way to reach out to people like João and be able to have these conversations. So, thank you for jumping into this experiment, João, and thank you for being here. I know you've had a busy day, but just really pleased to see you and notice your list shirt. So for everybody, check out List's shirt on João. And also, if you look over his right shoulder, a nice old legacy element of SharePoint. SharePoint Portal 2001 DVD box set. Really nice. So first, how are you doing? How is everything in your part of the world?
Doing good. Wrapping up the day after a full day of meetings. I did a session about SharePoint for a conference right after lunch. And now I'm finishing the day with this experiment with you. And so far, so good.
So far, so good. And I think the fun part is you've already talked today about SharePoint. I think you mentioned that you were talking about flexible sections, making SharePoint beautiful. Can you give us a little, how did it go and what was the reaction from the audience when you were showing SharePoint at its best?
Yeah, it was good, and I got a few comments about SharePoint not looking like SharePoint anymore.
Yeah.
And we spent almost 25 years trying to change the way it looks like, and now everyone wants SharePoint to look like SharePoint finally, because now it looks good and it looks pretty and it's super functional. So I'm super pleased with what Microsoft did with the flexible sections and backgrounds and the new brand center, all that we did with heavy customizations for a lot of years. Now it's available out of the box and it's great.
That's really nice. I feel like the spectrum over the years has really been SharePoint as an IT tool. Then SharePoint became pretty functional for a developers plus IT. Of course, it was always for end users, but I think it really was in the tail end of its life cycle, almost now 25 years, that it really started to nail some of what the expectation was to have a nice user front end. And I've seen all the things that you do to make it even more beautiful beyond out of the box. So don't go kidding yourself. There's a lot that SharePoint does, but there's a lot that João does. So let's 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 get into some of that. Just for a little bit of background, so you know, and I'll let you explain a little bit more. But I know you certainly as a lists expert. I know you also as a developer, somebody who's comfortable talking and using the Microsoft Graph, HTML5, of course, JavaScript, and I think one of my most admirable things that both you do, and I think when anybody does it really well, is just the use of JSON and the way that it's kind of a lightweight way of sprinkling magic over this platform, which I think responds really well to it. But can you talk to us just, balance of your head is a real big focus on the end user, but also you have the depth of knowledge as a developer. Where does that put you in the SharePoint ecosystem?
Yeah, so I started my professional career as a Windows 8 developer, not in SharePoint, but that project died before it went live. So I was quickly assigned to SharePoint, and that's where it all started. So I was a full stack developer when I first started. I was building ugly, nasty things for SharePoint '07 and 2013. Super heavy customizations. They look really well on paper, but then working with Internet Explorer was not always that great. So I end up breaking a lot of SharePoint sites in the process, but learned quite a lot. Did a shift from development to management, and I'm currently a product manager. But I never took off my developer hat, even though on my professional life, on my day to day, I no longer write code. Uh, Whenever I can, I jump into SharePoint framework to build something, or to list formatting that I really like to do, and I really like to transform the way lists look like by writing the JSON and the HTML and the CSS all combined into one. It seems super hard to do, but as soon as you get it, it's not that complicated and it's what I really like to share with the community over the past few years.
Yeah, you've made it really easy for me, a non-developer, because I literally copy paste your code and I put it into the advanced mode of a list item or a column, and it looks great. Look at that, makes Mark look really good. But I love this journey from Windows 8, which I think was maybe the first time where there's this notion of tiles and things that were meant to represent, as a front end to some information on the back end, which sounds familiar. Sounds like a web part on a page, or certainly with lists, how the item can be represented. So it sounds very complimentary, and I think it's a testament to both the platform and a big testament to you knowing enough about the platform about what you can do. But honestly, as we get into our first topic to talk about lists, one other thing that I think you do really well that I think is not only just a talking point, but it's just something for people to think about when you're using these tools. There's a lot of what you can do, but there's also the why you do it. And I think our last topic will really hit that home in the context of adoption. But I think a lot of what I've seen you do, whether it's different hackathons or different samples that you put out on GitHub, is that there's an intention to something that you're trying to accomplish. And kudos to your hackathon submission. This was last year. I know a new one is coming up
Mhm.
in March with the 25th anniversary. So it'll be exciting if you do that again. But maybe as we move into lists, the first question I have is kind of that notion. When you know of something that you want to build, a solution or just a way of tracking information or whatever, how do you first think about lists as being the right tool? What are some of the matrix of decisions that you go through? And then we'll get into some of what you've been doing recently with lists.
Whenever I think about putting something into a list,
Mhm.
that it's most of the times I use it for pretty much everything. The number one thing that I need to think about is the capacity of lists. Will I use this for hundreds of thousands of items? If the answer is yes, then I need to look into something else. Then the second thing is number of columns. I know that it grows and allows you to have a lot of columns, but if you end up with 200 columns, lists might not be the best thing for you to read information from. And
And you
lastly,
need a super high definition wide
yeah,
screen to look at your first column all the way to your 25th column.
exactly, exactly. And the last thing, if the data that I'm trying to store require a kind of a database relationship between different types of data, then usually it's assigned to look into something else. That's not always the case. Sometimes I can still figure creative ways of relate lists. But if the data that I'm trying to store falls into one of these buckets, then I look into something else. If not, I jump right into lists simply because of the flexibility it gives me.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about lists and maybe other technologies is you can jump in and kind of beyond going through your decision matrix. Once you're in, you're starting to add columns and put in information and decide how does it look? Do I need to track another column of something that helps me not only track it, but to then be able to view it in different ways? I was talking with a customer fairly recently, and we were just thinking about what is the column structure of your list. So we wanted to write down, get all the right stuff. And the real meat of the conversation was, and then how do you wanna visualize it? Not just you, but your program manager or your legal department or, all those things. So I'm sure you go through those same exercises. I'm
Yeah.
curious if you've got a top of mind one that you've built either because you're already building for the March hackathon or you've built one recently. What's been the most recent real close to real list that you've built? And if you could explain it a little bit.
So the most recent one was a really simple one, but it was an alert list, uh, just to store message. Nothing super important, nothing that needs to be broadcast across the organization, but a
Mhm.
place where you can put an alert message that is displayed on a SharePoint page. And instead of building a custom web part for it, I used a list with formatting, and it was as simple as that, with an expiration date, with a custom view that look into that expiration column whenever the expiration date is reached, it automatically disappears. This was one of the last ones, but it's not by any means my favorite one.
Hmm. Well, what was your favorite one? Now that we alerted ourselves to a recent project, what's the favorite one? Because then it sounds like there's going to be passion behind how to describe it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's one that I did for myself, and I ended up putting it on GitHub. I was using Microsoft to do quite a lot,
Mhm.
but it didn't have the integration I needed at the time with SharePoint. So I looked into it, and I copied every single functionality of Microsoft To Do into Microsoft Lists and applied the formatting on top that made it look exactly like To Do. Not all the functionalities are there, but most of them are, and it works exactly as I wanted. So
I I now I now want that because I feel like part of my past history as a product manager answered that question. Is Lists a task management app? And sometimes easy to answer because there was the old task template, the task project management template. There's now the work tracker. But to have the functionality as I'm imagining how you built it, did you even build in the pling when the task was done?
there's no sound in formatting, but I
Well,
wish, I wish,
maybe that's a request that we can put into the JSON team.
yeah.
Yeah. So you wear the shirt proud, the sweatshirt proud. You not only earn it from how you do it, but I remember how you
And
got it.
thanks. It's because of you that I have it. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, you bubble up as probably the 5 or 10 people that I can think of that not only know lists really well, but have contributed significantly to the GitHub repository and all of that goodness, and of course your willingness to share. So, last question around lists, and then we'll move into sort of the magic that you do with roadmap. I think there's a lot of things to talk about there, and lists might be ways that you help achieve what you do with roadmap. But the last question with lists is, where do you see lists right now? If you think about the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a huge amount of improvement around the user interface, functionality. The mobile apps have come and gone, but where do you see lists, especially in the era of AI? They're kind of barely starting to become agent aware, but I'm
Mhm.
confident that that'll become a bigger item that the agents can then have as a source of data. But where do you see them? Not just in the era of AI, but just today. The lists have been around for now almost, I think, the full 25 years. I think they came a little bit later than initial launch. But I'd love to get your take on where lists are and maybe where you see them going, and then we'll move to the next topic.
Yeah, the lists to me are still a central, one of the main core features of what SharePoint is. Thinking about lists and about document libraries. At the end of the day, everything is a list, and with everything, all the updates it got. You mentioned the mobile app, and
Mhm.
that was a huge loss. I was a huge fan of that, but well,
Yeah.
it is what it is. There are workarounds to do pretty much the same things using the browser. But with everything that Microsoft added, and not talking about the formatting, I'm talking about the templates, I'm talking about the forms. I wish it supported already external users for the forms. So
Yeah.
I didn't have to configure Power Automate and Microsoft Forms, but um, still things in space to improve. Hopefully, it will get the agent soon. I saw it already in the roadmap. I'm
Mhm.
checking it on a daily basis. Not there yet, at least for me. But I see it as a central piece of the SharePoint as a whole, and with still a lot of room to improve and to evolve to make it even more functional inside of the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I'm as hopeful as you. I think the world of agents and AI and just the breadth of the platform becoming available to the crawl, that's already there. Available to the graph, that's already there. With Work IQ and some of the other things that are just sort of dictating this push of doing more for how the platform, especially the trusted content service platform, I think lists have to become a part of that equation significantly, and it'll prove out to be as much as there's a push on getting more metadata and pages. I think it'll come, and I think it just means then lists have a really good spectrum of opportunity for the end user, even broader for the end user as they build out their agents, pointed as a list as a
Yeah.
source, including
Yeah.
document libraries and all. So I'm right there with you. Okay, so let us move into something I think a lot about as far as a consumer, but I don't know much about beyond behind how you do it, and that's why I want to
Mhm.
ask you about it because I think people should know your output. It's really helpful, and it's very pervasive across 4 products, maybe more than I know. But I really want to dig into what you do each month for basically highlighting the roadmap for Teams, for SharePoint, for Viva, and for OneDrive. Did I get
Yeah.
that right? No, sorry, for Copilot, or
Copilot.
maybe, yep.
Yeah.
So, can you walk us through the process? I'm only going to say one last thing. I think a lot of the information that you get is stuff behind the admin paywall, if you'll put it. You have to be an admin to see the message center. And there's so much value. I know that the SharePoint team, the list team, and all these teams pump a lot of information to raise awareness, not only from a roadmap, like, hey, we talked about it at Ignite, now you know, but when it's coming, what it is, what you need to know. So, with the context of yes, it is the roadmap, but it's really the roadmap that's presented to a really small segment to the way of where you pull it from. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions here, but just start us off. What do you do each month, and maybe highlight some of what the output is? But I'd love to hear your roadmap process.
So I do it on a daily basis. It's the first thing that I do in the morning. I actually have time on my calendar. Let me go back to when I started this.
Mhm,
Um, the original idea was to fully automate the publishing of whatever it's added to the admin center into the roadmap into the blog,
mhm,
because what you said, that information, well, the roadmap is available to everyone, but the information that it's published in the admin portal, it's super valuable. There's a lot of good tips and tricks and information about new functionalities that has that admin wall that not everyone is able to access to. So
mhm,
I built a system that looked into the available APIs or integrations with Power Automate or RSS feeds, depending on where I was collecting the information. And I wrote it to 2 different lists, completely automated. So
mhm,
whenever something was published, it went to a list. And then with Power Automate, I was publishing it to the blog. So this was the original process. But
mhm,
this was not creating value to me. So I removed the fully automated part. So there's no longer a flow publishing it to the public. Whenever you see something live, it's actually me pushing the button.
mm,
I'm not copy pasting stuff. It still goes to the list, but I go there every single day to force me to read because it's one of my responsibilities as
mhm,
a program manager. I'm a program manager for Microsoft integrations at AppSpace. So one of my core responsibilities is looking to what Microsoft is doing, and I need to do that on a daily basis because there's so many things being released that if I stop for a few days, I can easily end up with more than 50 items to read. So
yeah.
first thing in the
And
morning,
do you have a 5,000 list limit in your head?
I don't, but I reached that limit multiple times, so I had to create new lists to continue to store that information. So good thing
Yeah.
is that it's now a template on my tenant, so it's easy to set up a new one. So first thing in the morning, I go to the admin center. I go to the roadmap. Roadmap, it's already populated onto a list. The
Mhm,
admin center, I've built an integration that only works on my machine because it uses a scriptlet that only works in the browser. It's an extension for the browser. I read the post. I click in the button. It goes to the SharePoint list, and once it's there, then it's published. But it's me clicking in a
mhm,
button to put it into the list. So that way,
yep,
I force myself to read what is in there. and to be fully updated with what Microsoft has.
Right. So you're updated. The list then gets updated. Now it starts to become audience aware. You're talking about the blog and more than the blog. That's where I was also wanting to hear a little bit about.
Yeah. So it then it goes to the blog on a daily basis, and then when the month ends, there's a separate set of lists that for each post from Copilot, SharePoint, Teams, or Viva, it generates the HTML that it's added into the blog. So for everything that is published for that day, it creates a new entry. When the month ends, I grab that was generated from the list and I create the actual post. And recently, or last year, I started an experiment to create an AI podcast.
Hmm.
So it's doing well so far. I'm still trying to decide if I will continue this year or not because I've got a lot of people saying that well, this is super valuable to have it in an audio format, but I wish it was you speaking and not having the Google
Yeah,
voices doing it. But the thing is, I don't have the time to do the podcast. So again, it's auto generated. I provide the prompts in the information that I want to get highlighted on that
mhm.
episode. I still need to listen it, but I don't have the time to record for episodes. So this is the process. There's a lot of lists involved. There's Power Automate. There's custom code that only runs on my machine.
Mm,
And yeah, that's it.
that's great. So the output is 4 blogs. If I heard correctly, there are then 4 episodes per month.
Yeah,
One for each of the products. So again, just to reiterate, it's SharePoint, Teams, Copilot, and Viva.
yeah.
So FYI, everybody out there, if you're looking to stay up to speed, not only by visiting the roadmap, but really getting the sense of what's coming kind of this month or next month, within the timelines of once it starts to hit the message center, that's the information that Zhao's pulling from. So just being aware you've got another asset out there to really go deep into those individual roadmaps that are more pretty close to real time. Um, is there anything before we move to our last topic where you're doing these either automated things or manual things or publishing elements? Is there anything that maybe somebody who's a program manager at Microsoft or even just within the process where they can put a little more information or a little bit something that you feel is not only important to your process, but would be a really important thing for somebody who's interested in what's going on at Microsoft and wants to stay up to speed through your work?
Yeah. Actually, I'm glad you asked that because actually there is
Mm,
the message that I added to the admin center. Usually they are pretty good and they have a lot of information. But the ones that are publicly available to everyone, the roadmap ones, sometimes they have a single line with that
mm.
does not explain a lot of things. I know it's early stage. Something was decided to add to the roadmap. There's not much to tell about it, but giving a bit more of context of what will actually happen in the roadmap phase
Mhm.
would be great. Not
Yeah,
just for anyone out there looking into that information.
I'm right there with you. I think just knowing the process certainly, and be mindful of when it's early. You only know what you know, but usually at the time frame of something landing on the roadmap, let's say there's a big announcement at Ignite, or just something that's going to be at least a blog to disclose the information. There's the work that goes into the blog or the on stage announcement that could be, basically repurposed for what actually gets published to the roadmap. I know that they're not always timed exactly, but I'm right there with you. When I see a single line or a phrase that just is like kind of barely information about a roadmap, like if it's going on the roadmap, that should be a first excitement because that's maybe not where all the press is going to pick it up, but that's where a lot of the diehards are going to start to learn about what's coming. So
Yeah.
I'll plus one that if you need any upvoting, I'm there for you. Um, so, is there any roadmap item that you saw this morning? Now, technically, before we move to the next topic, that you saw today or
There,
yesterday
there,
that
there
is
were
that
there
you would
were
highlight?
there were no roadmaps this morning. I think it was an holiday or bank holiday yesterday or something.
Yep,
There was one item in the message center,
yep.
and
In the U.S., it was the Martin Luther King Day. That might
so
have contributed to it.
that's
All right.
whenever that happens. There's no message center or roadmap items added,
I
but
got you.
there's one from December that I'm always looking, and I mentioned it already. It's the list agent.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, keep looking into it.
Okay. Well, once it's there, I'm sure that you will have a nice blog, and I will probably learn something from it. So excited about that. All right. Our last topic, everybody out there is thinking about AI or getting it put in front of their face and being asked to do something with it or just trying to figure it out. They have it, they had a need for it, but there's a lot that it does, or there's a lot of how you do it. And it really boils down to raising awareness, being, you know, kind of thinking in scenarios and really starting to think, we're going to invest this thing. How are we going to use it? And you spend a lot of time with AI adoption, and that might be broader than Copilot. I don't want to just talk about one technology, but certainly if we do, that's okay. But I really want to know from a high level perspective, especially if you think about a couple of customer types. Let's just call out two. There's the customer that's just barely getting started with Microsoft 365 in the context of moving beyond email and calendar and basic team stuff. And then there's the fairly mature customer that's been there. Their content is there. People are active in different places. They use team sites and they're active in project and planner. And, they're doing all the things that just means they've been there for a while and they're comfortable maybe moving on to the next. And now comes Copilot, or now comes a connection to some other AI LLM element. How do you, talk to people about approaching becoming aware, picking the right scenarios? Or I don't want to answer the question for you by any means, but AI adoption to customers, one that's relatively immature from a Microsoft 365 perspective, and one that's been on the platform for quite some time.
The immature one might be the easiest one to convince to jump into the AI
Mm,
uh, world, simply because there's not much there yet
mhm,
in the information that exists in the system. It's not that much. Um, the other one on the other side might be a little bit harder to convince to get into AI. At least from my experience and conversations I had with others. At least to broadly make it available to everyone. When we first started getting co-pilots, the roadblocker was actually the price for a
mm,
co-pilot license. Then
mhm,
certain features became available as part of the regular license, and I think we are past that point now. People realize that the price that Copilot costs can be easily returned in a day of use because it does so much.
mm,
What I'm seeing at the moment that it's hard to explain is the fear of leaking information that was not supposed to be
mm,
leaked. And that's because of the lack of governance that exists in organizations that share more than they want to, even if they don't know that. And I might have access to a site collection where there's information about the salaries of all the employees, even though I don't know the name of the site collection.
mm.
Copilot might expose it with a single question. So these two things, these two level of companies are not necessarily following the same approach into the AI world. I think the ones that are more mature, they are starting to worry more about the way the information is structured and the way access is given to the information, while on the other end the smaller ones are just trying to catch up and build fast, and those will go all in into AI, either it's Copilot or other LLM.
The part that you mentioned which I sometimes think about in terms of perception. There's this perception that it's going to do something, or it might overshare, and it might. That's the thing, is there is a reality behind it. So the concern is real, but maybe the level of concern is something that is just a matter of talking them down, off the ledge. So I don't want to always go back to the past, but there was the same pattern when Office Delve first launched. And it really said, look, there's so much information in the graph, and then here it is, it's on my feed in Delve. Do you feel like it's that same level of concern, or this is a new beast because it's just even more pervasive, even more capable because you can talk it to it naturally, and it feels like it can just show you whatever you want to
Yeah,
see?
yeah. I think it's kind of the same level, but because you can talk to it naturally,
Mhm.
people has more fear about what it can expose. With Delve, then well, if you weren't somehow related with that information, then it would show up in your feed. If not, well, you wouldn't see it. But with this
Mhm.
one, if you want, it doesn't hurt asking. If you want to know something about the
Mm.
organization that you don't know, the worst thing that can happen is that Copilot will tell you, well, I don't have any information about that. But if someone added you as a visitor or with the right permissions to a document library, well, the information is there. Copilot will do what it's supposed to do, and it's not his fault. But again, um, that's the main concern, and I'm seeing a lot of people putting guardrails into their sharing systems so they don't overshare because they don't know that things were shared with everyone except external users by default.
Mm. One of the best elements that you can add as a permission: everyone except external users.
Yeah,
That's great for the company portal. Maybe not
it
so
always
great to use. Maybe not so great to use elsewhere.
it always works. No one will complain that because they don't have access to the file. So
Yeah, that's true. Um, so you're talking with customers, big and small, and or working internally, to get other people that are your colleagues on board. Are you seeing other common mistakes beyond governance concerns about pure adoption? Let's just talk about, hey, we trust it. We're going to focus on our governance and get our permissions cleaned up, get our content cleaned up. What are some of the other elements that maybe are listed as mistakes that is part of the reason why you show up to correct them? But any other patterns beyond governance permissions that you're seeing?
no, beyond governance and permissions, no. But there's one thing. Well, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but it's probably the lack of training or the mindset to use it.
Mm,
I see it a lot of times still defaulting to the search engine instead of the LLM to get information about something that it's already stored internally and shouldn't need to be searched elsewhere. So it's really having, for the end user perspective, not for the entire organization, it's having the mindset to use LLM first internally rather than going outside to the web to search for something that already lives in the organization, and it's they're ready for you to use.
mhm. So this is both for you and maybe if you're talking to a customer, just a couple quick questions around what do you do with AI? So this is you, Zhao, as a developer slash end user expert. Do you use it to create, to write things for you, to kind of give you basic outlines or full structured something?
Absolutely,
Do you,
absolutely,
do you use it to help you write code or review code?
absolutely. I feel that I use it for everything these days.
Okay. What other use cases do you use it for? As far as, is it sort of always on? As far as there's a page always open to ask and chat with it, or is it embedded experience? A lot of the apps have their own elements within, or is
There's
it kind of
always
a side companion?
there's always on my case, there's always Copilot open. I also have Claude open most of the times because I really like the way it works, and I'm glad it's coming to Copilot now. But it's always there. For a brief moment yesterday, Copilot failed.
Oh boy.
I don't know if it was worldwide, but at least here in Portugal, the only thing it replied back was, "Oops, sorry, and something went wrong." And it was
Mm,
not happening just to me. I spoke with some other people, and they were having the same experience. And all of a
mm,
sudden, I felt like the my early developer days when Stack Overflow was down, and all of a sudden I didn't know what to do and how to do it, and I felt exactly like that. Oh no, Copilot is not working. How should I do this now? So yeah, I use it for pretty much everything, and not being an English native speaker,
mhm.
I use it day in and day out to polish my text, not to write it for me. I still write my prompts. I write it less and less because I'm starting to use more voice to interact with it than typing.
Mhm.
But it helps a lot polishing my texts to look like they were written by natives. Not to, I don't want them to feel that they were not written by me, but I do quite a few mistakes writing in English. So if I
Yeah.
can write it right, why not take advantage of that? And
Yeah,
well,
that's smart.
I use it for that. I use it to catch up with pending tasks, pending items on my inbox. I'm the worst person managing email. I'm the worst. I can easily get hundreds of unread emails. And well, if something important is there, at least now I have an engine that it's able to get there and get the important stuff out of my junk mail, and give it to me. And yeah, that's it.
That's good. I feel like there's 2 points that you made me think of with email. First is just to let everybody know the majority of what we did, the 2 of us, Joe and I, to get ready for this, just to share a couple ideas and plan and schedule, was all done through LinkedIn messaging. So
Yeah,
we stayed out of his inbox, right? Just
yeah.
a
That's
meeting
that's the
invite reminder.
that's the best way to reach out to me. By the way,
Okay, well, that's good. That's good for everybody to know. That's actually very last question before saying goodbye. But the other thing that you got me thinking is one of the things I do in email is through the history of me typing emails, I sometimes write a little long or too much detail, or just don't quite get to the point. Even though I think I have gotten to the point, I just have too many details because I don't always like the back and forth in email. Like, just here's everything. If you need anything more, just let me know. But I've actually started to kind of write what effectively is a first draft, not for every email, but for something that feels like an important email. And I start to ask it, can you make this more concise? And the other thing that I learned from another podcast that I'd listened to was help me write this as if I'm sending it to an executive, somebody who doesn't have a lot of time. And it really helps get it a little bit
yeah,
more tight. It obviously helps that individual email, but it also helps me get out of my, writing too much. If I've gotten the feedback, you sometimes have an issue being a little bit get to the point, Mark. That has helped a lot. And it's not so much the writing of the email, it's the making the email effective. So
exactly.
I have used it for that. So João, it's been great chatting with you. I appreciate your time at the end of your day in Portugal, especially a day that was busy with sharing information about SharePoint here with lists and your roadmap process and all the things that make AI adoption a little bit smoother, so that people can continue to follow you. What's the easiest way for people to see what we've been talking about? Maybe also if you can mention the next event that you're planning to be at, pla- places and how people can keep abreast of what you're doing.
So the best way is to reach out or follow me on LinkedIn. I'm it's the social network where I'm mainly active these days. I still have Twitter and also have Blue Sky, but I'm not as active as I once was there. So
Mhm.
LinkedIn it's the best place, and well, it's a perfect way to reach out to me because it has a built-in chat system. Other than this, I have my newsletter on LinkedIn as well that I publish once a month with the sum up of the highlights from Microsoft, from the
Mm.
ecosystem. That's actually written by me, here and there polished by Copilot, but it's still me writing that. And I have my blogs, Hands on Tech with a K, .net, where all this information, the podcasts, the videos from YouTube, the blog posts, the roadmap, everything lives there. And also the formattings and the custom web parts that live on the community GitHub. They are also there available to download without the need to be compiled, ready to install. So all the things that I produce are in there.
Excellent. Well, I will advocate to anybody copy paste what João does and don't even look. Just put paste it in and enjoy. And I was hoping maybe that we could have one special giveaway. Do you think that you would do a free install of SharePoint Server 2001 for one lucky viewer out there?
Tough, tough. I never installed that. That's actually a sealed copy, so I don't know.
Whoa. Wow. Well, maybe you can bring it to a future conference and get somebody from the SharePoint team to
Yeah,
sign it. I've seen
I'm
Jeff and
thinking
I've
about
seen.
that. I'm thinking
Yeah.
bringing it to me, bring it with me to the MVP summit, and ask Jeff to sign it.
Yeah, I think that's good. You'll just need it in a briefcase with a handcuff that's locked so that, it's super
Yeah,
safe and secure.
exactly.
Well, thank you for joining today, Jao. Thank you, everybody who
Thank
joined
you
in
for
live.
having me.
I'll make sure to wrap up everything in a follow up post, but I hope you have a great rest of your day, everybody. And Joao, thank you for again
Thank you
for
so much.
for doing this fun experiment.
Thank you so much for having me. Had a lot of fun. Thank you, Mark.
Awesome.